Well, overnight, if you are just waking up, the US has launched a fresh strike against a Houthi target in Yemen. The attack targeted a radar site, was carried out with Tomahawk missiles launched from a warship, according to the US military. It says and describes this as follow-on action from those wider strikes that took place on Friday, targeting nearly 30 Houthi positions. And earlier, President Biden had warned the US would respond if the Yemeni rebels continued their, as he calls it, outrageous behaviour in attacking Red Sea shipping. Now, the Houthis have said attacks in Yemen will not go without punishment or retaliation. And then yesterday we saw many thousands of Yemenis taking to the streets in the country's capital hours after those initial attacks. Well, joining us now is Asha Castleberry, who's a US foreign policy and national security expert. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This is very big news indeed. Repeated warnings from the West, from the United States, from the UK to the Houthis saying stop attacking these cargo ships. 15% of world cargo goes through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. They were repeatedly warned, and the US and the UK and the international allies really had very little option but to strike decisively.
Yes, I agree. As you mentioned before, they had no choice but to move forward or proceed with a defensive airstrike. And you've seen it since this summer, where there's been repeated targets towards U.S. military assets, a lot of provocative activities in the Red Sea, also along the Strait of Hormuz, orchestrated by the Houthis. So what we've seen recently is that just more provocations, more strikes towards these vessels, and again, as mentioned by the UK officials, you know, there's just limitations in terms of what we could do moving forward, other than we have to be in pursuit of a retaliatory strike in order to regain or restore that naval deterrence.
And so just in terms of where it goes from here, this morning the front page of the Times says the Houthis are on the warpath. They are furious at the response from the West.
Well, we expected that. And, you know, for quite some time, since 2015, even when I was deployed there as a soldier, Yemen has been a hot spot as far as a conflict. There's been a lot of, the crises has been happening for quite some time, engaged with the Gulf, our Gulf allies. So for the most part, there's been a level of destabilization there, and as far as the Houthis goes, that's a stronghold for them. So of course, I'm not surprised with the retaliation or the level of protesting going on in response to this recent development.
So you were deployed there. Can you describe to us what it's like to be deployed there and what the political situation looked like when you were there?
Yes, well, I was deployed in the Gulf when the Yemen crisis broke out, and I will tell you, overall, we are the region is at a high alert, and unfortunately, it feels like right now that there's a crisis on top of a crisis, or all these crises are just all cross-coordinated, especially after October 7th, where you've seen a lot of, orchestration from Iran, where after October 7th, you start to see a lot of attacks along from the Houthis, from Hezbollah, from all the other Iranian militias. There's just been ongoing malign activities all in the region, and they're all interconnected. So just being deployed, I know how it feels when we were, engaging with countering ISIS, and at the same time we had our partners and allies engage in Yemen. So, and then you see that there's a role that Iran is playing in these different crises.
Mm-hmm. And the front page of the Daily Telegraph this morning, this is Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary. He warns Iran, patience is running out. This is very much the theme you're talking about. These Iranian-backed militias, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Islamic Jihad, Iran being warned by the Defence Secretary and indeed by the United States and other Western countries.
Yes, and once again, they have been warned because they've been extremely provocative since October 7th with regards to all these malign activities that are being orchestrated throughout the region. And they have been warned But again, we're seeing an uptick of activities, and it's definitely a concern, and it's contributing to the destabilization within the region.
And can I just ask you, in terms of that warning, will the Houthis listen?
Well, time will tell, but as right now, what we've heard from them that they're looking into retaliatory strikes in that area. But again, if they are going to do that, United States, along with their partners and allies, will be in pursuit of another defensive strike. So I do believe, in some sort of way, that they're learning their lesson right now in terms of there's a coordination among partners and allies, United States, that we will retaliate if they do strike again.
And there is a real worry, isn't there, about escalation, because we were talking about this earlier. This goes back to Saudi about to sign a deal with Israel. The last thing that Iran would want is that deal being signed. It suited Iran to destabilize that region. There is real concern now about escalation, but I think that it's the last thing that Iran needs and wants.
Yes, and we saw that, and that's also contributed to the October 7th attack. Iran did not want the Saudis to normalize relations with Israel, and so they worked very closely with Hamas, along with other key figures to deter that signature or moving forward with it. And it did happen. There is a pause. So they see that, oh, we can actually deter them from moving forward with a deal. But for the most part, they do not want to see a normalization between the Saudi Arabia and Israel.
And how much chatter is there between all of these militias, between Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis?
Oh, there's lots of it. I mean, they provide security assistance around to them, and a lot of it happens. Sometimes it can be fragmented, where initially when you saw the October 7th attack happen, there was reports going on or speculation saying that Iran is not connected, to Hamas and others in terms of what happened on October 7th. But then as time went by, you start to see more and more of the connection and more of the security assistance, and they have a history of doing so. So there's definitely some sort of command and control amongst these groups, and it's been happening way before October 7th. So, and it's well orchestrated. Even back in 2017, we used to talk a lot about how Iran is doing a really good job trying to establish this arc of influences extending from Tehran all the way into Beirut in Lebanon. Because of that, cross coordination is so effective among these groups.
Can I just ask you, though, Grant Shapps said to Iran, you must get the Houthi rebels and your proxies like Hezbollah, for example, get them to cease and desist, because we, the world, are running out of patience. How much control do you think Iran actually has?
Iran has a lot of control and a lot of leverage, again, because it extends itself not only across from Tehran all the way to Lebanon, it goes right into Yemen. And with regards to relationships among the Gulf region, there is some talks in terms of, peaceful talks amongst them in the Gulf region. We saw that with Qatar when it was time to negotiate for the hostages in Israel, where they had some sort of leverage with regards to Qatar trying to conduct those hostage affairs. So Iran has a lot of influences in terms of the region and has been actively working on this for quite some time. It's also been able to, gain a lot of momentum in Iraq for quite some time, especially after the United States withdrew from Iraq. So it has a lot of influences and in ways, and this is why it makes this situation so dangerous, because of the fact that they have a lot of influences where they'd be able to establish a lot of terrorist cells, orchestrate crises, conflicts, et cetera, et cetera.
And the question I'm asking this morning, and what many people are commenting on, is how worried they are about escalation. How worried should we be?
You should be worried. I mean, again, these crises are now more interconnected. And as you can see, October 7th and beyond, as this crisis deepens in Israel, it's most likely going to be connected to the crises in Yemen. So if you start to see where it's not necessarily closing out in Israel, then it's going to definitely keep going in Yemen and other parts of the region. So, but if you see a de-escalation, which I hope we're trying to achieve, and I do like the response where I heard earlier you said that the aim is de-escalatory activities. I'm hoping that, but if it goes the other way around, then it's going to interconnect with other crises in the region, and that's why I think you're going to see where the worry starts to kick in at high gear.
Now, the British Prime Minister chaired cabinet from the back of a car because, unbeknownst to us, he was on his way to Ukraine. The UK is to provide £2.5 billion of military aid to Ukraine over the coming year. I think there was real concern from Zelensky whether the UK would back it with more money. We gave £2.3 billion last year, so the contribution has gone up. There is another crucial point here, which is that the UK is the first country to sign a bilateral defence deal. That was mooted by the European countries. The Britain is the first to do that. How significant is this, particularly with regards to Russia as well?
It's very significant because right now the Ukrainian security forces have been able to win a lot of counteroffensives, and in order to keep going in that direction, you need to constantly provide them security assistance, and that's going to further deter Russian aggression. So I think it's a good move that the UK is in pursuit of a bilateral deal, because that helps secure in winning more counteroffensives, and we need that, because if we don't, this can spread to other parts, especially like Poland and other areas within the region. So we need to make sure that the Ukrainian security forces are provided adequate security assistance in order to continuously win these counteroffensives.
Can I just ask you, there's a lot of talk in this country about increasing our defence spending, and suddenly the realisation that actually we are in an interconnected world, and actually running down our armed forces, which it seems we have been doing for a very long time, is a very bad idea. Our total budget will be $51 billion. What about the US? What is the political implication of this conflict, and indeed what the average American is calling for in terms of defence spending?
I would say, for the most part, you have the split argument where in some you do have a dissent of people saying we need to use this for domestic reasons in terms of education, et cetera, et cetera. But there's this other argument where we need to increase our budget in order to build up our global deterrence, because we're noticing from our near-peer competitors that they're more aggressive in many places, many areas within the international system, like what you're seeing in Taiwan with regards to China, Ukraine, and now you're seeing in the Middle East where, Russia and China are playing in some ways indirect roles, but they're more confident as far as their decision making. And then when you look at the rogue states or non-state actors, they're more confident in the battle space because of the fact that they're just constantly gaining some sort of momentum. So it's very important for the United States to have a bigger budget in order to build that global deterrence as far as deterring our adversaries and competitors.
And finally, if I can just ask you, back to the Middle East. So what happens next? Wait and see? Look at the response?
Wait to see. And once again, I hope we're eventually in pursuit of de-escalatory activities, or the outcome of that. But again, it is quite concerning, and we're hoping for the most part we contain Iran in terms of their activities, but it's definitely going to be a lot more difficult in doing so.
Asha, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time. That's Asha Castleberry, US foreign policy and national security expert.